Loads of club matches to preview this weekend, lads. The highest profile one has to be the Hurling Leinster final, because it is a final, obviously, and a lot of the other matches are not finals. It's Clough-Ballacolla from Laois, who I'm right behind, against Ballyhale Shamrocks, who usually I'm right behind, but not on this occasion. Willie Highland is talking about what he said during the week there. We wanted to get to Croke Park. We wanted to get to a Leinster final. If we're underdogs or favourites, it doesn't really matter. There's no doubt they're underdogs. Like, do you think they wanted to get to Croke Park to play in Croke Park, or just because the Leinster final was in Croke Park, Niall? Because I'd see Croke Park being a huge advantage to Ballyhale Shamrocks. Like, I mean, they don't often lose there.
I'd imagine it's an advantage to Ballyhale as well, Wooly, because you think back in their recent games there against St Thomas's, and they were on fire that day and destroyed them, and they played well against Bursalee as well. And when you think of Clough-Ballacolla, you think of your own club even. Like, you'd love to get to Croke Park just because it is Croke Park, really, and that's probably rather than just that the Leinster final is there, you just want to play in Croke Park. And I was amazed during the week to read that Willie Highland, he'd only played once in Croke Park, and that was for Ireland in a shinty game. Like, he's never played a game of hurling in Croke Park.
He retired too young, you see, 28. You retired too young, Willie.
And he started though when he was 17, like, so he was hurling for Laois for 11 years and never got to play in Croke Park, which is still is mad enough. Like, but listen, I suppose, like, yeah, we seen Ballyhale the last day and the day before in O'Connor Park against Rhinos, and they sort of struggled that day, and the same against Mount Leinster. Maybe the tighter pitch isn't, like, ideal to their kind of brand of hurling, but I'd say when they get out in the wide open spaces, there'll be no bother on them.
That's the thing. Ballyhale Shamrocks, we mentioned this already, Lee, that they've played in 9 All-Ireland club finals. They've won 8 of them. It's an incredible strike rate. They haven't been beaten outside Kilkenny since 2012. That's 15 Leinster games. Fairly sure that's 3 All-Ireland finals. During that time, they're just used to it. And the problem with Ballyhale Shamrocks is because they're on the go all the time in Leinster. They go to Tullamore. I'm sure maybe motivation isn't a problem, but maybe subconsciously, here we go again. It's not new to them. But bloody, unfortunately for Clough-Ballacolla, going to Croke Park is enough to kind of spike the interest in Ballyhale Shamrocks and a Leinster final.
Yeah, there'll be no shortage of motivation like in a Leinster final. They work so hard to get to that stage of the year. They know from the start of the year that that's going to be their goal. They'll have their eye on the Leinster final from pretty early on. But it's David v Goliath, isn't it? Like, you'd love to see Clough-Ballacolla, especially just because, it comes from such a small community. It's like one school, one pub and all of that, like 300 members or something, to go down to Croke Park, right into the cauldron and take them on. Like, it would be some story. You'd love to see them do it.
Yeah, and it's a very proud day, there's no doubt, for your club. In 2004, Portlaoise went to Croke Park for the All-Ireland Club final. There's something about it. You're not usually there with your club. It's a very unusual thing. It's a very, very proud day, and the nerves are off the charts. Loads of teams, at least the footballers, are getting a chance to sample it in the semi-final. They're straight into the Leinster final. Willie Highland was talking about it. Every GA club has their diehards. We have some diehards who probably have never been past the Red Cow. So to see everyone going to Croke Park is just an amazing feeling for everyone. I think everyone's going on Sunday, so it's a great occasion. You always hear this cliche, and I never really understand it. Play the game, not the occasion. And if you were going into the Clough-Ballacolla dressing room, you'd be saying this to them. It's hard to actually break that down in very layman's terms. What do you really mean when you say that?
Oh, I don't know, to be honest, because when it is your first day out in Croke Park, like, it's just a different, and it's going to be a little bit different, and you're going to find it different, like, and
it obviously means just focus on the game, because there are a lot of distractions. Now, obviously, there won't be the same distractions with tickets and all that kind of stuff when we're talking with intercounty level. But it's just it means stay focused on, think about the game. Don't let Croke Park distract you. There's a lot of distractions, I suppose, is basically what that cliche is telling you.
Yeah, well, when they've never been past the Red Cow, that might be the first distraction.
They might see the Lewis for the first time.
Isn't it mad that the Red Cow is kind of seen as this GAA sort of a landmark? Like, anytime we're going to a game, it's like, you'd always see people there at the Red Cow, I suppose, getting off the Lewis and stuff like that. And Willie Highland talking about it there, just got a laugh out of it. The Red Cow is kind of...
It's a mark. You're into Dublin at that stage, yeah.
Yeah, you've made it into the big time. Like,
for the cultures, you want to have the ham sandwiches definitely packed in the back. Basically, Ballyhale Shamrocks have won, or Clough-Ballacoll have won 2 games in O'Moore Park. Ballyhale Shamrocks now are going up to practically their home ground in Croke Park. I'm going to start a campaign, take Ballyhale Shamrocks out of Croke Park. It's a complete unfair advantage for them, and split them in 2, even though like they're only a tiny little village. It's freaky. They're the freakiest club ever. There's no point in saying anything else, what they've done. And we talk about Clough-Ballacoll as only a small place. Ballyhale Shamrocks is only a small place. Like, I mean, it's just incredible. Other hurling game this weekend is another finalist, the Ulster finalist, Slough versus Ballycran from Down. Interestingly enough, Slough have been winning Ulster titles. Is it 3 of the last 4 they've won, and then of course the COVID one that wasn't even played, Lee. The last team to beat them was Ballycran. Most people won't, outside of hurling, people won't really have heard of Ballycran. I don't really remember them too much. I have a recollection of them beating Slough, but they beat them convincingly, Lee, and I suppose here's Slough chance for revenge.
Yeah, I think Ballycran's the last team to beat them in Ulster. That was at 2018, and they made have beat them by about 10 points or so.
Yeah.
Like it was a convincing victory for sure. Yeah, Slough, their tails will be up for sure for this one. It's an Ulster final, so they're always going to be up for it. They're out of the football, so all of their focus is on the hurling. And they got over Dunloy last week, which was already something of like a grudge match. And apparently Brendan Rodgers is just playing frightening stuff at the minute. He started against Dunloy at half forward. They moved him into midfield, and he just tore them apart from the second half onwards. I think he got 1-3 or 1-4 in the end. So he's in the mood anyway, and Slough look like they're in the mood, so they'll be up for it.
Yeah, I wonder is there like a wing forward position for Brendan Rodgers in football, potentially with his pace and his work, and maybe a bit of work rate around the middle. If you want to put Kieran McFall at centre back, is Brendan Rodgers kind of wasted in the full back line when you see his pace and you see his athleticism?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's because like Kieran McFall, he does bring scores to the game. I'm not too sure what Brendan Rodgers' shooting is like in football. To be fair, that's no criticism of him at all. He's a serious footballer. It's funny. I was
hurling, anyways.
Yeah. I was talking about that earlier. Actually, he growing up, he would have preferred the hurling, like in playing for Derry and county hurling setup, and football was definitely more of a backseat sort of role. But just as the Slough football team started to really come to the fold into that like dynasty team that took over, and then obviously putting in really consistent performances for Derry over the years, people sort of forgot just how good at hurling he was, because he doesn't really get the same platform in Ulster to show what he can do. So it was good to see him again last week showing stuff.
Yeah, the hurling. I like the way that's kind of what football people call hurling. He's good at the hurling.
The owl hurling.
The owl hurling. That's it. Brendan Rodgers obviously was absolutely outstanding. I think he's a great, exciting player to watch in hurling or in football. Like he definitely catches your eye, with his pace and definitely adding scores. Then he was sick actually, incidentally, in the last game when he scored 1-4 from midfield. So that'll show you what
you wouldn't have known it by him the way he was.
No.
I was watching the highlights there. The point he scored down the wing and got good goal as well. And just as Lee was talking, I kind of remember in football, even as going back through the years, I can kind of even remember him as he was fullback, bombing up and kicking a few scores. And he's just such a. He gets you off your seat, and I remember that day against Ballyhale Shamrocks, he took off down the wing that day and left some lad for dead completely and stuck it over the
from
bar.
the sideline.
He's just real direct, isn't he? And bombs forward, and he's great to watch.
Yeah, he's good at the owl hurling, so he is. There's no doubt. Before we go on to look at some of the football matches, we have to apologise to I have to apologise to Newtown Shandrum, because I made a serious error on the show here on Monday. I'm glad I don't make too many errors, because whenever I do, I'm very well reminded of it in the DMs and on messages on Twitter that everybody can see. So you made a comment that Cork teams haven't won in Munster since 2009. And then I said something like, geez, when was the last time they won it? You'd have to go back to the bars in the late 80s or the late 70s before we'd find a Cork winner. So a man from Newtown Shandrum was on to me.
Of course he was.
Well, Lee, I have to pull you up on something there. We won it in they won the Munster 3 times in the noughties, and obviously won the All-Ireland final as well. And I remember that team well, so it was a big mistake from me. A fantastic team. It's such a bizarre thing. Like Cork were revolutionising hurling at inter-county level and able to take on Kilkenny and beat them. And Newtown Shandrum with the Ben and Jerry, who were such a big part of the Kilkenny or the Cork inter-county team, they were Newtown Shandrum, and they almost played the exact same way now. They're a very memorable team.
Oh, at the exact same time as well. And sure,
yeah.
It was in 2004. I'm nearly sure Portumna won their first All Ireland, and that was the day Newtown Shandrum were going for 2 in a row. And sure Cork were going for their 3 in a row around those years as well. Like, and no, it was just I don't know how we forgot them, to be honest. I have to hold my hand up here as well, because
You're the hurling person here now.
yeah,
It's just a football man.
I don't know how I let you off with that. It was just the bars. But Newtown Shandrum, just when I was growing up, to be a team that you'd always watch. And there's one player, like, I know it was always Ben and Jerry O'Connor were the men, but Cathal Naughton was a man that I used to love watching, just because I'd say when I was a young lad, he was my first favourite hurler, just because the pace, like, and he just took off, I suppose, down the wing, a bit like Brendan Rodgers. But no, I don't know how we forgot about Newtown Shandrum, to be honest, because I remember watching them loads of days.
Yeah, he'd just stick it on the hurling, run with it. That man would. What did
Cathal Naughton,
Cathal
yeah,
Naughton,
and
that
like,
was it.
it'd be the same. He wouldn't even start for Cork, and I'd always be going mad, like, why is this man not starting? Like, and he'd come on then, and that was just a tactic. He'd get the ball and leg it, like.
Yeah, one other thing I was pulled up on Twitter recently, I said that no Tyrone team has even made an Ulster final since 2002. Never mind win it. Errigal Kieran was the last one. And I was pulled up on this one as well, because Oma made the Ulster final in 2014 and put in a great showing against Loughnane. I have a very clear memory of watching that game on television. So there you are. We're not very good at looking back down through the lists. Well, I'm not, Niall. I'm going to take the blame for that. Your stat was perfectly good. Saturday, these games are on television on RTE. The first one is Shelmaliers of Wexford versus Naas. Like, I mean, there's not much more you can say about Naas. Like, I mean, they're still proving that, all clubs need to do is get in a manager that's costing them, maybe costing them money. This isn't just Naas. This is any manager, any team that has an outside manager. Pay them for half a year. Let them get the lads fit. Let them organise a game plan. Now say, look, we're done with you now. The players are going to take this over. So, like, I mean, who needs a manager? Like, I mean, this is Naas are very, very strong favourites here, Lee. Like, I mean, I can't see anything but a Naas win, and obviously their journey looks like it's going to continue.
Yeah, but I'm still excited to see it, because I think this might be, I think I'm right in saying this, that this is the first time Naas are playing on, like, terrestrial TV. It's always been on, like, streams and stuff, so I've never actually got to catch them live. So, it'll be good to actually see them in action and see this whole player-manager dynamic and Eamon Callaghan just running back the years and stuff. Like, I'm still looking forward to it.
Yeah, so Shelmaliers had a good win over Naomh Martin the last time. I was fancying Naomh Martin, and the Wexford teams never really do well in Leinster. They haven't done, as long as I remember following Leinster. Interestingly, Simon Donoghue's fullback for Shelmaliers. Always nice to see a hurling man have a go at the more skillful game now. Yeah,
he's coming back from the hurling to play a bit of football there, and no, I think they've a lot of dual players in Shelmaliers, because in Wexfordshire it's nearly the case where every player is a dual player, and there's a few lads that I was up in college with playing for Shelmaliers this weekend. So while I'm sort of maybe invested in the Naas story and you'd like to see them go all the way, it'd be nice to see Shelmaliers do a job there as well, because Wexford clubs don't get there too often in the football, really.
No, they don't. Definitely don't. 5 o'clock then we have Port Harlington versus Kilmacud Crokes. Great from a Laois perspective that we have two teams on the television this weekend. Like, I mean, trust me on this. I've been right in Port Harlington now since I saw them earlier this year. This is going to be a cracking game, because the way Port Harlington play, you're going to enjoy this match. And Kilmacud Crokes play a nice brand of football as well. Like, I mean, the Dublin final was more Jude's kind of, using the tactics they thought they needed to on the day. But this is going to be two teams going at it, defending well, but not sacrificing their attacking game plan by overdoing the defence. They'll defend well, they have good defenders, and that's the way, as far as I'm concerned, football should be. You should defend well, throw two or three extra numbers down there if you need them, but do not sacrifice the ability to kick it up the other end of the field and actually let your forwards get one-on-one. So you're going to see some fantastic attacking football, as far as I'd be concerned. I'd be really looking forward to sitting down on the couch, cracking open a can of beer, Lee, and enjoying this one.
Yeah, I'll be right there with you. I mean, you've really built that up now. So if it's a stinker, you'll be getting a text message. But
I'll be getting lots of DMs. Don't worry about that.
Yeah. I'm wondering too, like, because we sort of talked about when St. Jude's, that it probably was more their fault the way that Dublin final went, and that was the way they thought they had to play football to win that game. But, like, they nearly did win it. They caused them a lot of problems, and they really held them up to it. And I'm just sort of wondering, do you think by going, because you know a lot more about Port Arlington, do you think by going all out attacking and opening yourself up, would there be any risk at all of sort of suffering maybe a hammering from Kilmacud Crokes, or is it just not that sort of Or they're not at that level?
I don't think so. Like, I mean, Portarlington have a very good defensive unit, very good individual defenders, and they'll drop the two wing forwards back. The midfielders are two big athletic fellas who will get back as well. So the kind of idea that because you leave four forwards up in the forwards, and maybe they'll only leave three, and they might be worried about Mannion, that somehow you're going to get hammered. I don't subscribe to that. Like, I mean, that's no offence, Lee, but that's an Ulster mentality as far as I'm concerned.
I didn't say it was going to happen. I was just saying,
for it to even cross your mind.
Hang on. I was just pointing to the fact that St. Jude's had some success, and I'm wondering if other teams who maybe be fearful, especially because they wouldn't be very experienced in Leinster. Like, don't paint me as this. I have enough trouble.
Well, you come up with the question. Listen, I was used to this long enough with Stevie MacDonald and Conan Doherty and all these fellas on the show. This is a kind of defeatist attitude. Oh, we're going to get clean. At the back, if we don't bring back lads. Like, I mean, I've said this 101 times on the show. You would think that before Jim McGuinness came into Gaelic games in 2011 and played a very, very, very defensive counter-attack game of football, that the end score in matches was like 5-25 to 3-30. It wasn't the case. There was games that finished 10-9 in points with no defensive extra cover. Why? Because the teams were able to defend. Like, I don't subscribe to that, and I think Portarlington will show that you can have a nice balance. Keep your eye out for David Murphy, who plays full forward for Portarlington. He was on the Laois panel with me in 2003 or 2004, I think, or he was a minor with Laois in 2003, so he must be 36, 37 now. But Jesus, he was a fair man to run back in the day in the long distance runs, and he's like, you're looking at him, you think he's still in his 20s. He's breaking every time, leaving his brother Colm, who's the scorer, closer to goal, which is always a nice dynamic in the full forward line. Keep your eye on it. Keep your eye out for Paddy O'Sullivan, wing back, number 7. He kicks the ball an awful lot. He's great pace. Keep your eye out for, obviously, we know Robbie Piggott. He'll probably torture Mannion the whole way through the game. Robbie Piggott thrives on that kind of thing. I'm really looking forward to it. Have you anything to say on this game?
I just hope for your sake that Portarlington get up on the right side of the bed and put up a good show, because Lee will be fairly smug if they don't.
Yeah, well, if they do get hammered, well, listen, it's just as well I'm leaving the show.
Exactly.
I might never have to see Lee again. Right, up to Ulster now, Lee. Up to right. You'll get your mass defences here now. Maybe Derry Connolly are playing Clonairin. This is in Kingspan Breffni Park. This is on TG Cahir on Saturday. This is on TG Cahir on Saturday night as well. Yeah. So there's 4 games on television, 3 on RTE. There's an All Ireland club final in Camogie. Owlert de Bala are playing Sarsfields, 2 massively famous clubs, obviously, in the Camogie. So you've Camogie, you've Naas Shelmaliers, you've Portarlington and Kilmacud, and then you've Derry Connolly. If you've any more room for GEA in your day, you've Derry Connolly Harps versus Clonairin. Like, I mean, Derry Connolly have been very close, in Ulster. Like, they're favourites going into this, which is, surprising enough, considering you think Armagh, you think Crossmaglen, you think this is the great thing, Lee, about the provincial championships. It doesn't follow those inter-county lines at all. The Fermanagh champions can be favourites to beat the Armagh champions. And that, for me, that's what makes it unpredictable and what makes them so exciting.
No, yeah, completely. Otherwise, Tyrone and Donegal teams would be a lot more successful in the provincial series, which definitely hasn't been the case. But Derry Connolly, they overcame Dromore in the last match, and it was pretty. To be fair, it was some mass defences were on display, but it got very exciting towards the end. And Conal Jones in particular, was fantastic from the dead ball. He hit a free kick just to equalise it right at the depth. It was against the wind outside the boot, in a celebration afterwards, and then they had their tails up, took Dromore to extra time, and then he was just prolific from there on. I think he scored another 3, 1 from play, 2 from frees, I think. But they were all monster kicks. He was just fantastic. So I'm looking forward to seeing him again in action. But there is parallels with like Clonairin in that stage, because they played Craigan, and it took a last minute free kick, an outrageous free kick as well, to send that game to extra time. It was Tiernan Kelly. It was maybe even more impressive. And then they sort of got the stronghold in extra time and managed to get over the line. So you've got these 2 teams, that never say never. And they were sort of more on the favourite side of the draw in the Ulster Championship. They managed to avoid like Glen, Kilcoo, Scottstown and teams like that, and came up against Craigan and all, who'd never really been in Ulster before. So it's a golden opportunity to reach a Ulster final for both teams.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it is. And Derry Connolly have been in around the mix. In 2017, they beat Armagh Harps who were the Armagh champions. So they've shown that they can beat the Armagh champions. And in 2017, they lost the semi-final replay to Cavan Gales. So they were up there around the mix. And then 2 years ago, they lost to Kilcoo in the semi-final as well, 1-8 to 9 points. And we know Kilcoo went so well and are such a good team. Like Derry Connolly are nearly there, you know, Niall. So like, I mean, they're probably rightly so their favourites for this one.
Yeah, they're always thereabouts, and any game that they are in, it's always a tight game. Like, and they've been Fermanagh champions. I'm not sure how many it is in a row now at this stage, but they're definitely the dominant team in Fermanagh.
One in a row.
Is it just one in a row? Right, well, that's good.
You won 6 and then lost it and now regained it again.
We'll go to 7 in 8 years one, so I'll give them that. And
Willie's just destroying everyone on
I was just being a dickhead on
my well, listen, it's a stat, so I have to take it on the chin. But they're very they're consistent, aren't they? And they're always there, and I'd say it's only a matter of time before they do kind of make their mark, like, win an Ulster title, like, because they seem to be good enough for it.
Yeah, they definitely are. So they'll obviously, the winner of that one plays the winner of arguably the stronger side of the draw, is Kilcoo versus Glen. Really looking forward to this one as well. This is at 4 o'clock. Live, but it's deferred coverage on TG Carey. It'd be very, very difficult not to check out the result of that and watch it as live on TG Carey. I can never do it. And then I look from the scoreline, like if it's 9-8 to Glen, like I'd be like, am I really going to watch that now? I know the score. I might just maybe watch highlights or something like that. Here's one for you, Lee, since I'm on kind of attack mode here. So Chrissy McCaig said Chrissy McCaig does all the media for Slough-Nail. I don't know how he has the patience. So he's obviously a brilliant interviewee. He's obviously a brilliant player. And for their footballers and their hurlers, whenever there's like a media, day, he's the one that's put up. And that's obviously to protect other players. They obviously see him as having the maturity to be able to handle, being in the media and stuff like that. For me, I would like to share it around and give all the players that kind of experience. But anyways, that's Slough-Nail's reason. So usually when you see Chrissy McCaig, you're not really, it's hard to find angles with him because he's done so many of them. Like, what are we going to talk to him about? So I think the journalist obviously must have asked him about who he fancied in the other semi-final, in the football semi-final rather, not the other semi-final. They're obviously in the hurling final. So he was asked about who'd win between Kilcoo and Glen. And he said to call that one would be difficult, but I do firmly believe that in Kilcoo and Glen it's a bit strange that it's a provincial semi-final, because I believe currently that they could be classified as number 1 and 2 in the country. Now, I don't really know where he's getting that from, because the reality of it is Ulster teams haven't won an All-Ireland club since 2012, and that was Crossmaglen, right? So since then Connacht have won 5 All-Irelands. So, why are Pearses or Knockmore not being put down as 1 and 2 when they're coming through by far the strongest province in recent years? Leinster have won 2 All-Ireland clubs, and they've been both Dublin champions, Ballyboden, St Enda's and St Vincent's, and Kilmacud Crokes have come through that championship. So I'd have Kilmacud Crokes ahead of them, based on the championship they've just come out of. And Munster have won 1 with Dr. Crokes, and Austin Stacks have come through that Kerry championship, which is really, really difficult. So, I'll have to respectfully disagree with Chrissy McCaig, and I think it's a serious Ulster bias, and I'd like you to explain it to me.
I feel like you're making it out like I said it. I have to agree with you. I definitely don't think it's 1 and 2, but I do also agree that you got to defend the Ulster teams, and just we put them on a platform, try to speak it into existence, say we're the best team, and then we'll worry about being the best teams after that.
Yeah.
So you got to say it first.
Well, look, in his defence, no one was saying Tyrone were the best team in the country at the start of this year. So I could have egg on my face at the end of it, although both of them can't make the All-Ireland final, so this can never be.
Yeah.
Chrissy's theory can never be proven right.
He's
there's no back door.
Himself into a hole there. No, I suppose a part of him maybe wants to build Glen up a big bit, because Slough-Nail in the Derry Championship in all the past few years anyway, they'd always been deemed as the favourites, and they were always coming up against the underdogs and stuff. So maybe he's looking to build Glen up a little bit. Already got 1A on next season, and then he's maybe a bit sympathetic towards Kilcoo because he would have worked under Mickey Moran for a while, and he's just doing him a favour there by throwing him a compliment or two. Other than that, I have no idea where he got that stat from.
Yeah, it's strange, isn't it, with Glen, the reputation they have now, considering they only won the first ever county title. Now, fair is fair, they're after winning 2 bloody good games, the Donegal champions, who traditionally are pretty good. You know, Nave Glenties and stuff have gotten to finals. Kilcar have done well in the Ulster club, and they've beat Scottstown, who've been a very, I suppose, is not really based off their county final win. Actually, when you think about it, their last 3 games they've beaten Slough-Nail, Unans, and Scottstown. You know, so maybe the reputation is deserved.
It is, yeah. Like it's very good form that they have, and like having watched them that day against Scottstown, they have a lot of talent, like, you know, and to have Conor Glass and Kieran McFall in the one team, like it's a fair spine to have in your team, like, but at the same time to see Glen as, I was just checking the odds this morning, to see Glen as odds-on favourites to beat Kilcoo is a bit of a surprise to me now, right. Especially considering...
What do you mean when you say odds-on?
Like they were 8-13 and Kilcoo
right.
were something like 7-4, like, which is a surprise to me, like, because watching Kilcoo the last day, they were absolutely brilliant that day against Rammer.
Yeah. And
going back to the last All-Ireland club final, sure, they were there and they ran Corofin all the way.
They should have beaten Corofin that day.
Should have beaten Corofin, like, so... I don't know, and it's the same with the All-Ireland club, like, you were saying Glen and... or Chris McCaig said Glen and Kilcoo would be the favourites, but the bookies have Kilmacud Crokes straight away, followed by Glen, and Kilcoo back at 8-1, like, which is
right.
Like, in fairness, like, they've been brilliant this year, and they have a very talented team. But I wouldn't, if I was a betting man, I'd be back in Kilcoo just because of the experience they have in that grade and what they've done before. Like,
yeah, no, it's definitely an interesting. This will be the hardest. This, you could say that if Glen win this Ulster title, they'll have beaten Union, Scottstown, Kilcoo, and probably Derry Donnelly to win it, and that's after beating Slough-Nail in the Derry final lead. There's no doubt if they come through that. Okay, I might stick them in ahead of Kilmacud Crokes. Well, Port could beat Kilmacud Crokes, you see. I'm giving them a good chance.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of it comes from, and we sort of talked about this before, the amount of success that they had underage. So, like, everyone in Ulster's really building them up because they knew that this team was coming, and they were saying for years and years, they're coming. Even at the start of this season, you know, when I was saying that, like, Slough-Nail and Glen are big rivals, and you were sort of saying, how could they be rivals? Because there was no rivalry, really. But it's because of that underage sort of, and the big hype that was around it for so many years. So now that they're finally at the forefront, it's just a load of people pointing and saying, see, I told you so.
Right.
So that's where a lot of it's coming from. But yeah, like, I mean, they've just been so impressive as well. Like, no one ever really walks the Derry Championship, and they won it by something like a 13-point average. Very, very comfortable, and then beating the mighty Slough-Nail. And then, like you say, just getting over the line against a very, very defensive St. Eunan's team, but, you know, over the line nonetheless, and dominant against Scottstown. But I still think Kilcoo might be favourites for this game. A little like when Malachy O'Rourke, we talked about Malachy O'Rourke knowing Scottstown and Monaghan football and stuff, and the way he was able to utilise that information to, you know, to nullify the Hughes brothers and stuff. Mickey Moran's a Glen man, you know, he grew up in Mahara, he played for them, and then he managed Slough-Nail, so he's managed teams against them for years. I think it was 4 years he was in charge of Slough-Nail. So it'll be really interesting to see how he sets up against Glen, because he'll know them better than most. How he'll deal with that sort of stronghold in the middle of Emmett Bradley, Conor Glass, and Kieran McFall just behind will be very interesting indeed. Like, I'm really looking forward to this one. To me, this is my match of the weekend. I'm excited. Yeah,
no, definitely. I think most people are excited about that one as well, and get a look at Glen against the likes of Kilcoo, who are probably that step ahead of the last two teams that they played. Austin Stacks versus Newcastle West. This is in Austin Stack Park at 1:30. Austin Stacks won the toss for this one. So they obviously have an agreement, Limerick and Kerry. So, like, I mean, that's a huge advantage to Austin Stacks. Jimmy Lee, the Newcastle West manager, said, we've a solid defensive unit that we have been that all year. It's been hard to break us down, and we've worked very hard at that. When I hear hard to break down, like, it's like a euphemism for we drop a lot of bodies back, and that's usually the last while. And we know Austin Stacks drop a lot of bodies back. So I'm glad this one isn't on television. Now I'm just reading in between the lines here, and I'm not holding out for this one to be a classic.
Yeah, well, I'm glad it's not. Well, I wouldn't be watching it anyway because there's 4 games on television on Saturday, and to be honest, I don't think I'll be able to survive that for 4. Like, you'll have to just cut out 2, like, because I don't know. You'd
be gassed out. No, have you ever tried to do it? Watched 4 games? Like, I mean, by the end, by the 4th one, you're like just gazing at the television. There's nothing really. There's nothing sinking in.
No, like, to be honest, by the time the second one comes on, you'd even be a little bit. I'd find myself going a bit like
gassed out, especially groggy, when you're trying to concentrate on it and try, you know, pay attention to everything. You know, like, I mean, you do get tired. It's like maybe it's like studying, maybe not studying, but if you're sometimes I'd be stopping it, rewinding it, see what happened there, and it's a lot. When sometimes when there's a third one on TG Carey, I'm like, Jesus, I don't want it.
Yeah, you're looking at the screen and you get a bit zonked, like, and you just want to go outside, like. But listen, it's very much first world problems we're talking about here.
Yeah, it's like, I like the way you said it. You just want to go outside. I just want to go outside, get my hurl, puck it against the wall after watching a hurling match.
That's exactly what
you want
you
to go
do.
And practice what you did.
Yeah, go back to the hurling.
What you saw. The other one then is St Finbarrs versus Éire. I don't know what it is about this Munster club football, but it doesn't capture my imagination like the other three provinces, Lee. Like, it just doesn't. Like, Cork teams have, obviously Nemo Rangers are outstanding. It's usually been just Cork and Kerry, and it hasn't. We know it's not great at inter-county level, but all the other provinces, have got outstanding club teams, even though their county team isn't outstanding. But Munster seems to still follow that Kerry-Cork kind of boring procession to, what's going to happen in the Munster final.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. It's like the county identity sort of follow the club in the Munster sort of championship. Yeah, I mean, it definitely is. It's not. Out of all the games we talked about there, I mean, I'm not super excited by this one by any means. I like the look of Stephen Sherlock. He's a sharpshooter. I like watching him play. But I mean, apart from that, I don't even have really anything too exciting to say. I mean, you imagine the Bars would win this one, and they'll go on through and play either is it Austin Stacks and I forget Newcastle West.
We just talked about it.
I got there. Didn't let anyone interrupt me. I got that on my own. Let the record show.
Yeah, well, that's it. You'd imagine St Finbarrs are going to win. Although you wouldn't know. Finbarrs haven't made a Munster club final since 1986. You'll be able to tell us how good Lockmore Castellani or how high of a standard that football in Tipperary are. They were able to handle Lockmore Castellani, beat them after extra time. I wouldn't see this as the foregone conclusion. It is in Páirc Uí Rinn, which is an advantage.
No, I definitely give Éire every chance, like, because like Lockmore had a very good year, and like they beat Clonmel Commercials, who are very good, a very good team, and like they're not an old team by any means, Clonmel Commercials, like, so Lockmore had good form coming in, and by all accounts, they played fairly well that day against Éire. Like, Éire have good players, like, David Reedy is there. There's a few other lads that are, and I've seen the goals that they scored that day. It was the big Darren O'Neill got a brilliant goal, and just a powerhouse around the middle for them. And yeah, I was just thinking about that, what you were saying about Munster football, and that is the kind of the way. And I suppose I don't want to miss someone like Newtown Chandram here, but the only club outside of
My Rovers, no?
They got to All Ireland Club. I was just saying the Kilmurray Bricken from Clare. They got to the All Ireland Club final, didn't they? But you can't think, like, there's no real sort of juggernaut, like, a Cross McGlen coming from somewhere in Munster, like, other than like Dr. Crokes.
Yeah, like, Murray Kilbricken is a good example. They were beaten by St. Gall's there to beat Portlaoise in the semi-final. I remember them well. There's no doubt. I think Moyle Rovers were good in the Declan Brown era. They had Foley fella in midfield. But anyways, listen, that's it. So we fancy both. We fancy Austin Stacks. We're not too sure about the other one, but that's it. We've previewed all those games. We'll come back and we'll look at a little bit of news in part 2. Okay, lads. What was that? 33 maybe? Great.
It is Darren O'Neill is your man's name, isn't it?
I think so. The big massive tall fella.
Yeah, I'm nearly sure that's him.
You're all right if you get his name wrong. It's definitely. I'd be fairly confident that's who it is. Let us know when we can continue, lads. Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's a bit of news around. I want to start off with something I'm not comfortable about at all, and that is criticising DJ Carey and not agreeing with DJ Carey, who's an absolute legend, who is, one of the best hurlers that's ever played. But he's talking about the July inter-county finals. Right, so this is going to be weird. There's no doubt about it. It's going to take a little bit of getting used to, but you have to remember this is for the greater good, that the inter-county season, number one, ends sooner, so that inter-county players' whole lives aren't being dominated for 9 months of the year is number one, and number two is to give the split season a good chance, so that 90% of the playing members of the association get a fair whack of the year and can play during the summer. And we know all the good reasons for it, but there's no doubt it is going to be weird. DJ Carey said, "We promote our game by saying that the club is the basis and the backbone of everything, but I'm not sure and I mean that as a GAA fanatic, like whatever's going on in Galway Club Hurling or Dublin Club Hurling or Cork Club Hurling, that's not of huge interest to me. Now, you can't be a GAA fanatic and say that's not a huge interest to you, because it is. Absolutely. You're not a GAA fanatic then, DJ. But anyways, he says, what I mean is, I'm not tuning into it. But if Galway were playing Dublin or Cork were playing Wexford, that's what I'm tuning into. Or I'm at those games. So, like, he's not a GAA fanatic. DJ Carey is clearly loves watching the inter-county game, and he's not too bothered about what happens in different county club games. Now, I don't know, he never mentioned the provincial club games, but that's not what a GAA fanatic is, Niall. A GAA fanatic is reading the websites and the newspapers to find out what's going on in every county. That's what the fanatics do, and some fanatics would know way more than us about who's playing for who, and they know that Glen are on the way and all these kind of things. Like, I get a little bit annoyed when I hear this kind of stuff, only because I keep talking about the provincial club championship, and we're going to have it next October, and we should all be looking forward to that. We should be, in 5 years' time, the inter-county season will not be seen as the end of the season at all. It'll only be the end of that season, and it'll be the start of something that's just as good. I strongly believe it. If the GAA sell rights in the next media deal and properly promote, not the county finals, I'll give them that. Like, they'll be on TG4 or whatever, but properly promote these provincial club championships and promote them properly. I don't see why finishing the inter-county season in July will ever be a problem. Now, I know we're all on the same page as this because we love, the club, but I disagree with GAA saying or DJ saying he's a GAA fanatic. What he's described there is more of an inter-county, summer kind of bandwagoner.
Sunshine follower.
Sunshine man, yeah.
Well, I'm the exact same as you, Wooly. The last thing I want to do is give out about DJ Carey, because he's an absolute legend, and anytime I've interviewed him, he's the soundest man going as well, and he call you by your name, and just a pure gent. But yeah, he's definitely not a GAA fanatic the way he's going on there, that you wouldn't be interested in what's going on in the other counties. And like, I don't really see the problem with the All-Ireland going ahead in July, because it's not as if it's the middle of winter and like that. The weather is still grand. There'll still be a huge audience.
We won't. It'll be strange this year until we get used to it.
Strange is the thing. Like, it's not as if it's losing much other than the kind of tradition that's there.
Yeah.
And like, I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives in terms of like club players and the provincial championships, as you said, but more so, I suppose, the main playing population get to play at like not too late in the year, and they get to play in proper conditions, and everyone gets to play when they want to be playing, in the middle of the summer. So I'd say the positives definitely outweigh the negatives there, and don't want to give out about DJ, but like I wouldn't agree with him in that sense.
I think the monthly that we're going to notice the biggest difference in is August, because obviously we'll have inter-county, we'll have the best inter-county time in July. The height of the summer, the All-Ireland finals, all that, it'll be fantastic. Then August is all going to go away, and everyone's just going to filter back into the grassroots and play your group games and in all the clubs. And there isn't a national interest as such in early games. Even myself, I would find it hard watching a group game, in any county, because there's not much riding on it. But then we're in the middle of September, we'll start getting the semi-final, final stages. And then in October, we're back to provincial clubs. So we're only going to ground a little bit in August, September. But I think August is probably the month we'll be going, Jesus, this is usually, this is where the huge interest is usually in the inter-county season.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a little bit of a lull at the start of August as we sort of wait for everything to sort of build and bubble again and let it go. But it'll be well worth it just to get that second, rise, like a whole new season sort of starting pretty much straight away.
Yeah.
And if it gives the provincial championships
a second wave, we could call it, Lee, seeing as we're...
Yeah, a second wave. Yeah, let's use all the terms. Everyone wants another wave. And it's like you say though, if it's done correctly and they're given the platform that they deserve to be given, then this is going to change everything, and it's going to change it for the better. I don't really get what he's saying, like with we say club football is not the backbone of the game, but like it has to be, because if you got rid of county, club football would still be there, but if you got rid of club, there would be no county. Like it doesn't really work that way. But even with the players, like a lot of this so this season was condensed, and then players would want to hang on and they'd actually want to play their football and play their hurling, and they'll stick around the inter-county scene. So then you're going to get better players, then you'll get more value for your money, and it'll be more entertaining. And it's better seeing all them in July than seeing half the team that aren't interested in giving up all year playing inter-county football in September. I think it makes so much more sense this way.
Yeah, I completely agree. So Barry Kelly has been in the Examiner. You always know when there's a big controversial weekend of refereeing, the Examiner will always have some referee on, to give their thoughts on it. It's Barry Kelly this time. It's usually Brian Gavin. He writes articles for them during the summer. It is good to get a referee's perspective, but again, it's the same old thing. Oh, online abuse is not fair, on referees, whoever. This is the world we live in now. There's no stopping this. The answer, we've said this on the show, the answer is, if you're worried about online abuse, don't go online, because I don't see any way to stop it. But he's talking about something I don't necessarily agree with. He says there's such an intolerance for referees making mistakes. A Ballyhale player, that was Joe.ie, was sent off before half-time for St. Rynagh's. I'm quite sure TJ Reid, Colin Fennelly or Adrian Mullen didn't give him a complete and utter bollocking in the dressing room. And I'm quite sure the Ballyhale supporters didn't turn on him either, and correctly so. He made a mistake and he could have cost his club a place in the Leinster final. John McGrath made a similar mistake in reacting like he did. He probably being annoyed at the Ballygunner player, etc., etc. Now, I disagree with this, because, Ballyhale won that game. Had Ballyhale lost that game, absolutely, Joe Cuddihy would have got. He probably, maybe Ballyhale's not a good example. It's a close-knit kind of community, but you might get some fellas slobbering at him. The reality is that they think that referees are the only ones that get it. You make a mistake that costs your team a big game, like give away a penalty, get sent off late in the game, because usually the referees get abuse over these late kind of calls. And the ones we kind of criticised was the 4 decisions at the end of the Montbellier Mylock Padraig Pearse's game. If you're a player and you make 4 mistakes, so say for example you give away a penalty, and then you get a black card, and then you come back onto the field and you give away a free that loses the game, do you think you're not going to get any? I don't necessarily agree that referees get it. Players get it. Anyone that makes mistakes in a live game that's of huge importance, do they not all equally get it?
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you. I think everyone, when they make a mistake, the last place you want to go is to go online, because there will be people giving out about you, and I suppose you probably should be if you're trying to avoid that, you should be mature enough to just block it out and not get kind of sucked into it, and because I suppose everyone's biggest critic, whether you're a referee or you're a player, is going to be yourself. If you've got something wrong, so it's a difficult one, because I suppose there's a lot of kind of in referees' rules. Sometimes, maybe the John McGrath thing, for example, Johnny Murphy, he was going by the rules. John McGrath gave him a little flick, and maybe in the rules that is a yellow card, and you have to put up with that. So I suppose it's kind of, sometimes what I'm trying to say is that referees might get abuse for things that by the rule book are the right thing to do. Do you know what I mean? And maybe it's just you need to kind of accept the rules a bit. Maybe we need to accept the rules a bit more for what they are. That if a lad you'd hear people giving out about refs for pulling a lad for taking 4 or 5 steps, and you're not actually allowed to do that, and I think maybe it's just there's so many grey areas with refereeing. It's a tough one to sort of.
Yeah, I'm surprised the hurling person is promoting referees blowing for every little free.
Well, I'm not promoting it, but I'm just saying maybe the rules are just a small bit there's so many grey areas in them, and every referee is different in their own way, and if they're reffing it to the rule book, it's probably unfair to criticise. It is unfair to criticise it,
Maybe, but I think Barry Kelly here is talking about refereeing mistakes. Do you think a referee gets it worse than a player who makes a mistake, Lee, or is it equal, or what's your take on it?
Well, if he's talking about online, I don't know. I don't think so, to be totally honest with you. We talked about the Hughes brothers for Scottstown, when they got them red cards, and we talked about it afterwards and how they sort of, they were hoaxed into that, and there was a weakness on their part in the player, and no one was talking about the referee just flashing out reds or anything like that, and because Scottstown lost, it was pretty quick that they took a little bit of the blame, but it was all very constructive and sensible. And I think it's the same with the referee. When they make a mistake, I don't think there's any harm at all pointing that out or highlighting that. Obviously don't be a troll online or anything, but in certain situations, if they've done something wrong, I think it's just totally correct to hold them responsible for that. Just as a manager would hold a player responsible for making a mistake, and vice versa. Even players, when managers make mistakes, they've been known to revolt and mutiny and go to the committee board or whatever to try and overchange this because they know something's not right, and the mistakes, they just can't stand for them to a certain extent. So it's just about holding everyone accountable, and I don't think referees get it worse or better.
Right, okay. Here's another one. Is Cian Lynch was talking after winning Player of the Year. I was going to mention this on Monday, but we didn't have time. He says he's talking about a bit of downtime, and I suppose that's important for these fellas. I played 2 Fitzgibbon league matches with NUIG. So they're the only 2 times I took it out. He's talking about his hurl. Other than that, I wouldn't pick it up. You want that appetite and that hunger to be sparked again. It's at this time of the year you want to do other things. A bit of indoor soccer with the lads, or going to meet your friends. You didn't get to meet the last while as a result of restrictions, or you're trying to protect yourself. I suppose different bubbles, whatever different bubbles means. But I was looking at that, kind of laughing that the Fitzgibbon manager, or I wonder, is he on a scholarship in NUIG? I wouldn't think they're too happy with the fact that he's coming back and he's only played 2 league games with them, hasn't trained with them, hasn't even picked up a hurl outside the 2 of them. So I'm not criticising Cian Lynch because I think he's probably doing the right thing. He wants to come back fresh for Limerick next year. But I don't know if I'll be as public about how little I'm picking up the hurl for your Fitzgibbon team.
I think Sean Finn said the same thing, didn't he, before the league last year? But I
he did, yeah.
When you're just a lad that's as skillful as Cian Lynch, and a lot of, you can come back to it and you'd have lost nothing. A lad is.
He doesn't drink or smoke or anything. Do you ever see this man with his top off? Or him or Conor Myler? These lads are phenomenal athletes.
They're like professionals, aren't they? Completely. And I don't know, I wouldn't say NUIG, I wouldn't say they'll be holding it against him. I'd say they're just delighted to have him.
I think so, whatever. But here's another thing that I was always wondering, is because I remember with Portlaoise and before training, if the hurlers were finished on the field and the footballers were coming on, there'd be the mixing of the lads, and some of the footballers would get out a hurl and they'd be pucking it around and having a bit of crack with it. And there was one lad, Brian McCormack, he plays with Bruno, he played with Portlaoise, arguably the greatest player that's ever played for Portlaoise, and he was a brilliant hurler. He's just brilliant at everything, good at golf, he's good at anything that he takes up. But he'd take out a hurl, he wouldn't have hurled for Portlaoise. He hurled senior with Portlaoise but gave it up then. He'd be able to take out the hurl and he'd be hitting off both sides and striking it the length of the field. I remember Tommy Fitzgerald saying to me, that fucker, how does he do it? I have to work on my game and my striking so much, because he wouldn't. And I remember JJ Delaney saying he wouldn't have been a brilliant striker of the ball. Even how good he was. That some lads just, and I'd say Cian Lynch is of the, whenever he picks up a hurl, that striking's just, how much do you have to keep your eye in at it, or how much is it natural that, geez, look, that lad, some lads could pick up a hurl after 2 years and it's like riding a bike, whereas another lad, if you're not a good striker, do you get the point I'm trying to make?
Yeah, I wouldn't be the most skillful hurler by any means, but I'd find whenever, there was a summer I went to America and you weren't doing too much hurling over there, and when you come back then, you pick up the hurl and it feels like a bit of a foreign object for a few minutes, and you're getting used to it.
Till you bring it to bed with you for a few nights.
Till you sleep in it for a few nights, yeah. But eventually, after, say, if you're poking for 5 or 6 minutes, it comes back to you, and you're
right.
You don't really lose it too much. I'd say if you practice.
How can JJ Delaney not be a good striker? When you think about it, I probably should have asked him this in his tribute show, but he wasn't, because Brian Cody was laughing at him. He only scored 1 point ever because he wouldn't have been able to strike it that far, And I remember his clearances. They were never launching it like Tommy Walsh would or anything. He'd be hitting it, kind of maybe lower trajectory or whatever. But how can he not refine his technique to be a better striker? How can you not be a good striker at that level?
Well, I wouldn't say he was a bad striker now.
I didn't say bad.
I'd say he's just been a small bit modest there, in fairness. But I suppose some lads, they do just have different kind of strengths to their game. Jay just probably would have been, well, he was good at everything, but his main thing would have been up in the air and catching balls and a brilliant first touch and great man to get the ball into his hand first. And I suppose it's probably to do with your style of striking the ball. Some lads just have that. They have it, and it could be the smallest lad in the team, and he just have a brilliant strike. And I suppose it goes back to when you're younger and you've put in all the hours of practicing, and that's the same with what Cian Lynch was talking about. I think a lot of it comes back to what you do when you're very young, and all the practicing you do, hitting the ball off the wall. I'd say that kind of sticks with you more so. And I'd say you wouldn't change much. When you get older, I don't think you change your game too much from, it's what you do when you're younger that kind of really stands to you, like, and makes you better, like.
Yeah, exactly. Right, Tom Ryan, he's written to all counties. So Mayo and Roscommon, they've passed motions for Congress. So this motion's going to Congress. I call it the John Connellan motion. He's done all the work on this. Like, he's done absolutely fantastic work on this. There's no doubt about this. And now it's been passed. Roscommon, Mayo, I think Galway have passed it in the meantime. So it's going to Congress. This motion, I'll read out the motion. All coaching and development funding must be allocated to individual counties on an equal basis, based on registered GAA members in the preceding year of each county, up to a maximum variance of 5%. Any proposal to allocate coaching and development funding in excess of a 5% variance must be brought to annual Congress every 2 years for approval, with a transparent plan and business case for such an increased funding. Like, isn't that incredible? Isn't that incredible that, like, number one, when you read that, you'd be like, how the hell is that not the case already? But we know Dublin have been getting hugely disproportionate funding. Anyway, Tom Ryan has wrote to counties pretty much going along with everything John Connellan has done. So he's saying that they want to equalise the game's development funding. Didn't reference John Connellan at all, who's done all the work on it. John was tweeting saying that he's been in contact with Tom Ryan for the last 2 years and been completely ignored. And now John Connellan has done all the work on it. Tom Ryan, I suppose, not to really look bad, that hasn't been engaging with John in all the brilliant work he's been doing, has now writing to individual counties pretty much asking for the same thing John is. So it's a little bit of a strange one.
Yeah, it's almost like just sort of trying to steal credit for this brilliant idea, or this very obvious idea nearly, but like he put, like you say, like the legwork in to finally get it going, with that letter not so long ago. It begs belief that when you read it, and it just seems it's so obvious that you're like, how is this not the case already? And when you see like the disproportionate numbers that are spread around, and then you look at where the success is, it does follow the money, and you gotta just be like, it needs to change. We can talk about all the different things with strength and conditioning and team cultures and all the rest of it, but like, there's no denying that this is a huge part of club development and county development, and it needs to be sorted.
Yeah, and if you don't agree that money, makes a difference, then you don't believe in sports science. You believe that there should only be one manager on every team, and no backroom teams, because they're a waste of time. No underage coaching, because that's a waste of time. Let's just bring them all up without any coaching, and let's have it fair. And that's what you believe in. If you believe money doesn't mean anything. I spoke to Tom Ryan on the show here, and I asked him about Dublin dominance and their funding, and he didn't seem to have any answers at that stage. And that must be 3 years ago now. And there didn't seem to be too much of an appetite for them voluntarily to equalise all this. There was always, we need, Dublin need that. And, there was never a case that absolutely that looks unfair, and absolutely we're going to, this is our plan to reduce that over these amount of years and have it completely equal. It took John Connellan to literally go to every county board with this proposal and do all the research on it and sell this to them to get this to Congress, and this will fly through Congress, because why wouldn't it? Like, I mean, the delegates, I don't want to say what I'm going to say. Regardless, there's very few delegates, I would imagine, that would vote against this. Tom Ryan has kind of seen that, and now he's rowing in behind this one. Why didn't you do it on your own, Tom? That's the question I would ask him.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what you were about to say there, but no, like, it does seem a bit. It's a bit harsh from Tom Ryan, like, to kind of take all what John Connellan he's been campaigning for that for the last year or two, and it's taken him an awful lot of work, and I know he's a busy man as well himself, so he's put a lot of effort into that, and to not even get acknowledged for it, from Tom Ryan, is a bit it's a bit rude, and it's not fair on him really, but fair play to him, at least without him this mightn't even be happening.
Yeah.
So fair play to John Connellan.
And I think most people recognise that without John's incredible work, that this wouldn't, and everyone can give out about it, and I'm here giving out about it. And have I done anything about it? No. And remember, Aaron Kernan always giving out, with the Club Players Association, Lee, and everyone gives out about fixtures, but who actually gets up off their arses and do it? They're the ones we need to be thankful for, because it's very easy to talk about it. And, and again, it's the same thing in clubs. Oh, geez, they're shite. We've no manager. We can't, underage is shy. Have you gone down and coached anyone? Oh, no, I'd rather, you give out about it. And I have to say, I'm a little bit like that as well. I'm a giver-outer rather than a doer, Lee.
I see. We get the conversation started, and that's how you get these things going. That's you hide behind that cliche, but no, there does. Finally, someone actually just stood up and wanted to be pragmatic about it. I was saying that these are the issues. This is how you can actually solve it. Let's go, and here's a roadmap on how to get there. And then it seems so obvious, and like we're saying, why wasn't it done earlier? But like someone wasn't brave enough, or will we and other people that weren't brave enough to actually take that physical step forward and make a motion. But John was, and fair play to him, like, because if this does, and like you say, it should do, get through, then it should be named after him, whatever he does go through,
Well, it should.
and he should get all of the credit.
Yeah, no, exactly. The fella in America said to me before, Parky, there's two types of people in this world. There's talkers and there's doers. And I think I fall into the talking category. John Connellan falls into the doer category, which is great, which is fantastic. One other one for you here, Niall, is GEA. We're back on the money. Money makes no difference. So Tipperary GEA have recruited former Arsenal head of academy, sports medicine and athletic development, Des Ryan, to lead an overhaul of their coaching structures. Jeez, right? So Setanta College. Colin Bonner and Tommy Dunn both went to Setanta College in Tipperary, is it?
It's the strength and conditioning side of the college in Thurles there, yeah.
Right, okay. So they're going to take the lead in the strength and conditioning of all senior and underage county teams in both hurling and football. This is a bit of a coup for Tipperary, because we talked about Brian Cullen going full time with the Dublin, GEA, and getting the underage players. You don't want to be bloody cracking the whip on younger players, but getting them exposed to strength and conditioning, not at too young of an age, but when they land up to under 21 and senior, they're well developed physically, and it's not strange to them, and it looks like Tipperary are going down that road. Their chairman Joe Kennedy said Setanta College is a world leader in delivery of athletic development programmes, and led by Des Ryan, this partnership will have major benefits for all the Tipperary teams and the future. I'm not sure who's paying Des Ryan. I presume it's the Tipperary County Board.
Well, it must be, I suppose, a combination of the Tipperary County Board and the sponsors as well. It's that's Setanta College. I think Michael Fenley, he was in there as a lecturer, for the strength and conditioning as well. And a lot of the lads lads who be hurling in Tipperary have gone there and studied strength and conditioning. It seems to be a very good college there, and it's definitely a thing that Tipperary have been kind of lacking in. I'd say maybe in this year especially, there was a few people saying after the Miners lost, they were well beaten by Waterford down in Waterford, and everyone was saying that the Tip Miners, they just looked a lot kind of smaller than the Waterford boys, and it was the same with the under-20s. They were maybe horsed out of it a bit by Cork. So, and when you do see when you see the Miners and under-20s nowadays, when you see the inter-county lads, they're huge men, they're as big as seniors, what you'd expect to be seniors nearly 5 or 10 years ago. So I suppose it's definitely a good thing that Tipperary are kind of trying to get up to that level, and get a lad who was in with Arsenal. It's not a bad way to go.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing about hurling is, I was always of the opinion that hurlers didn't really need to do as much strength and conditioning, because it was a very, very skill-based game, and in the rules you're not even allowed to tackle the man. You're meant to, block the ball or hook or whatever. But I think Limerick have shown, and since they've kind of brought crowding the man on the ball, and more of a physical kind of football, and a lot of teams are playing more of a running game where you're tracking fellas, and the strength and conditioning has, I think, in the last maybe 3 or 4 years, has become a much more important part of hurling. Just look at the Limerick players; their chests are literally sticking out through their jerseys.
Yeah, they're huge men, and they definitely have changed it, because that's the whole. That's Limerick. Maybe it is forgotten a small bit about Limerick that they are they have this unbelievable level of skill, but it's just a mix of the two, isn't it? They have the physicality as well, and when you see them and you compare them to any other inter-county team, there's nobody that's as big all over the field and as strong and as athletic as the Limerick lads. And I suppose that's why counties like Tipperary are kind of making this move now, kind of seeing themselves, maybe the scene that they were falling behind a small bit, from what Limerick were setting.
Yeah, I follow Conor Myler. I've mentioned him on the show already, Lee. Conor Myler has the physique of a boxer. And a boxer at a weigh-in. That's how cut Conor Myler is. And I seen him recently. He's on holidays at the moment, just flicking through this Instagram. It's all new to me. But he's on holidays there anyway with his missus. And he was in a pair of shorts. And the the quad muscles are just bulging out of his legs. Like, I mean, is this lad a bit freaky with how much he kind of dedicates himself to GA? Because I'm not sure I've seen a physique like it.
Yeah, he's very known for being really, really dedicated, and he would say himself that maybe one of his faults in the past were that he can be really intense and maybe too intense and get in his own head just because of how obsessive he would be with it. I think his other sport growing up was country cross running. Apparently, he's just frightening over long distance, so he's always built up like an aerobic sort of fitness there, and he's just built on that. And he obviously told, once he got to a certain level with Tyrone and club, that he needs to put on the muscle, and he would probably do that to all of the extremes as well. And then it's finally paid dividend. He'd be a big advocate for like all that sports psychology and everything too. Everything that's 1%, he's trying to add it on to his game, and he's just a sponge when it comes to that sort of stuff. And like you say, yeah, look at him now. He's the result, isn't he? Like, he's the perfect specimen of a footballer that you would imagine now. And what I think's interesting about Des Ryan taking over with the Tipperary is that he's taken over all the age groups, isn't he?
That's the important thing. Yeah,
that is, yeah, because I remember interviewing Paddy Talley, and he believed that like underdevelopment or development teams in general should maybe be done away with. He thought they were sort of destroying young footballers, and a lot of the reason behind that was like you'd have strength and conditioning coaches for the under 16s team, and they'd be telling you to do loads of weights. Then you get to minor and it's a different coach, and he's like, no, that was nonsense. You need to do plyometric stuff, all this explosive stuff. And then your body's torn and ripped to pieces, and you're going to club and it's something different. And he says there was a teacher at St Mary's University that he had lads there that couldn't sit on the chair correctly. They were so stiff and everything, and it was because they were going through so many. It was unstructured development. So to have like one head, one voice, one plan for the county and everyone at that level from the bottom up, it'll prove really, really successful, I think.
I think it will, because there's no profession. Well, I suppose scientists at the moment all have different opinions on bloody pandemics and stuff, and you don't know who to believe. But strength and conditioning coaches, they all have different theories. They all have their own way of doing things. They all, think that the way they, there's obviously enough room for lots of different approaches. And Lee's perfectly right, Niall. Like, you can't go from one to another and three different ones that the manager pulls one lad in. One lad might be good, another lad the next year, then you lose all that and you're doing something that you're for your development. Like, again, this is one thing that money can buy you if you can afford it, is the Brian Cullen. And because I always mention Brian Cullen because he's the first ever that I can think of full-time strength and conditioning over all the age groups, and completely, synchronise the whole thing. Like, I mean, that's hugely important. Like, and Tipperary will see that. I'm fairly sure Limerick have that as well. Your man Gurran was with them, wasn't he? He's gone to rugby now. I think they need a new strength and conditioning. I'm not sure he was over all the Limerick underage, but I think Tipperary will definitely see the fruits of this, from 40, maybe 5, 6, 7 years time.
You'd hope so, yeah, because like it is the most frustrating thing maybe with a strength and conditioning thing is you start off on one year and you could be going great at it, and things are, you're seeing a bit of results and you're getting a bit bigger and stronger, like, and then you go in the next year and maybe there's a new strength and conditioning coach and he's giving you a completely different set of exercises, and it's just, there's no consistency to it or no real kind of pattern to it, so it can be hard to make progress then, like, so it's definitely the right way to go about it, to have the same lad in and try and make progress that way.
But and it's not even that. There's innovators in this game as well. Like, I mean, you always look at the All Blacks. Like, I mean, rugby went with massive arms, massive, big, heavy kind of players. And then New Zealand kind of took it to new levels where they didn't even use that many big men. There weren't bulging muscles. They did a lot of explosive stuff, obviously. And, rugby's going back kind of that way where you don't need the monsters. I hope I'm right on this, or you don't need the huge muscly men, more dynamic. And sometimes I wonder with the Dublin footballers why their strength and conditioning looks so far ahead of everybody else's, and they don't seem to get tired. And Fenton's just, maybe these lads are just freaky. Maybe they've done media stuff with the All Blacks, and maybe there was an exchange of expertise. Because like, I mean, there's strength and conditioning coaches. There's coaches technically, tactically, who are innovators. There's also, coaches at strength and conditioning level that are innovators as well, Lee, that like push that boat out and get one step ahead of the rest. And this is what we want to move towards. Because when I was doing strength and conditioning with Laois back under Liam Kearns for the first time, it was all bench press. It was all arm curls. It was all, basically stuff that the lads loved if you're going on holidays. But like, I mean, it's not doing much for your explosive leg speed, and stuff like that. I actually didn't do leg weights at all. It was, I got a notion in my head, it'll slow me down. So I just pretended I was doing them. But like, I mean, this was the kind of thing, I really liked what I was doing to my chest and my arms in a t-shirt. But like, I mean, it's obviously moved on, you know, to Conor Myler basically looking like a boxer at a weigh-in.
Yeah, no, it has, and I think another example would even be if you see Cathal McShane. So he's so big, but like also like really, really lean. You know, really powerful, but really fast. You know, it's like that sort of, they've got the balance just right, basically.
Yeah.
And I think it was sort of like it was in 2011 when Donegal came. They got so massive and they were so like dominating, and then it was tight jerseys were just sort of introduced back then as well. And everyone thought like footballers the last 10 years, even like when we were growing up from the underage clubs and stuff, it was all like you said, bench press, bicep curls, disco pumps as we call it, all the wrong sort of things. But you were making your upper body so big for a sport that involves so much twisting and turning.
Yeah.
That like hip injuries, like everyone's hips are just ruined now. Like if you play football at my age, say, because you've been preparing and are developing so incorrectly for years beforehand, and hamstring issues and everything. Nowadays, like if you go to a minor setup in any county, everything will be all glutes and power and box jumps and squats and things like that, you know, and it's all just done correctly. And that's just, it's trial and error, and it takes a while for common sense, I suppose, to seep through, because it's like, yeah, ego gets in the way definitely when it comes to gym, and you see the bicep curls, you think I'll do a couple more chin-ups rather than a few more box jumps.
Yeah, and well, I have to pull you up. There was Armagh in 2003 that started the tight jersey phenomenon. Their arms were off the charts back then, because that was my era, and we copied them then in 2004. We had the skin tight jerseys, but Miko didn't have us doing any weights, so it didn't make any, it's not like we were intimidating anyone. It was still kind of baggy on my little skinny arms. So like, I mean, we just copied them. And then there was one or two lads on the Laois team, let's just say, weren't too fond of the tight jerseys with the bit of a belly that was probably around in those days. So like, I mean, yeah, it was Armagh started the tight jersey. They've moved away from those tight jerseys now as well. Yeah. Go on.
I know. I heard. Sorry, it's just like what you said, and because I remember Joe Kernan had brought that in with the tight jerseys to look intimidating and stuff, and that other counties had went to copy them. But when I just watch them old games, like I don't think they still look really baggy, you know.
Really? Well, not a McGeaney.
Yeah.
McGead or arms.
Well, not a McGeaney. No,
I think it was the sleeves on the arms were very, very tight, and they rode up higher, so their biceps were in full show, and they all had the guns. They probably weren't doing the right weights back then either, by the looks of their bodies. They were all top heavy, you know. And then I remember even back in the day, then we started, because we were so late doing the weights, and then Armagh obviously were starting them, and it was all bicep curls, I'm sure chest, and they all had the big chests and everything. And then as we started doing weights in 2007, now we're 4 years behind everybody else. We started with the chest and the bicep curls, and I remember talking to Alan Brogan, who'd be a good friend. You know, he's saying they're doing an awful lot of those snatch kind of things, you know, explosive stuff down into a squat and up over your head, and like, so Dublin had moved 4 years ahead of us, you know, in the evolution of what kind of the weights thing were. And I think that's it. You're either catching up on these things or you're kind of leading from the front. And it's, you know, the explosive kind of stuff that Dublin were doing, you know, like you're saying, a lot of box jumping and a lot of those, you know, squat jumps and all that kind of thing, explosiveness in your legs. That's what they were doing while I was doing my bicep curl, thinking I was absolutely great. So that's it, yeah. Innovators on strength and conditioning. It's an interesting enough subject, isn't it? I could do a show on strength and conditioning with one or two of them someday, if I wasn't leaving. Right, we'll leave it there. Talking about leaving, that's it. We'll talk. We're back on. We're okay. Wait there. I'm not gonna say that there. What am I going to say? All right. We'll leave it there. We'll talk to you. Fuck, what am I going to say? Because we're not doing a show on Monday.
In the new year for that?
No, I won't. All right. We'll leave it there. Talk to you later. No.
When is the best of show going out? Like, or when is
29th? But it's 29th.
Oh.
Okay.
Just say talk to you next week for the best of thing, is it?
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there. We'll be back on the 29th or the 30th for a best of show, best of the whole year. So we'll talk to you all then.
Good luck. Just before you go, Wooly, and I know you're doing the best of show on the 29th or the 30th, but just from my own perspective, I just want to say thanks for, I've enjoyed every minute of being on the show for the last 2 months, and I've been here in sports, so I think for 3 or 4 years now. You've been here for 5 years, and when I started at the start, it was the G hour was there, and I'd say from then on I've barely missed an episode listening since, and I'm definitely not on my own in that sort of maybe a fanatic of the show, because I'd say I'm speaking for a lot of people who've listened to the show down through the years, and we mightn't have agreed with you on everything, but definitely enjoyed it. And so just from my own perspective, just want to say thanks and wish you all the best with the new thing. I'll definitely be following you anyway. And from Sports Joe and Joe as well, we got you a little GA Hour jersey, a mug, and a little message from a few of your past pundits. We got onto them and they have a message for you here now.
Thanks for everything, Willie. Honestly, you've taught me so much. You've been class to work with. I know you've genuinely inspired other people as well, and you've put together an unbelievable body of work that you should be really proud of. Although I'm guessing you already are really proud of it, because it's not like you to take a bit of credit for something you've done well. But you should take credit for it. And while we're giving out credit, sure, why don't I take a bit of credit as well? Because I know that I've taught you a few things along the way. I mean, look, football isn't as fucked as you once thought it was, is it? But it's not about me. I'm not coming here and you're going away party to say I told you so, although I sort of am. But I'm mostly coming to say well done, fair play, mate, and enjoy it, because what you've done has been ridiculous.
I hope you're very proud of everything that you have achieved on the show, and the numbers that you had listening on a weekly basis were incredible, and I was delighted with the invite on a number of occasions to be able to add some content. But I suppose just for myself, the biggest compliment that I can pay you is that from working with you, the level of professionalism that you had and the level of passion you have for Gaelic games is way beyond anything that I thought you would have had, and I'm sure the rest of the general public. So congrats again on everything, and the very best wishes for whatever you get stuck with in the future.
Wally, how are you? Congrats on everything you've done with the GA Hour. Great achievement, and best of luck on your new venture, wherever you end up. No doubt it'll be a success. Talk to you soon, bud. God bless.
Just want to say we had some great chats, myself and Cheddar and myself, and we ruling the roost over them Munster boys and sewing it into them. But I know, seriously, I suppose for me, the low light would have to be the fact that myself and Cheddar got it wrong on occasions, and to hear you get the predictions right ahead of us, that's particularly hard to take. But I suppose a stop clock is right twice a day too.
I suppose I just wanted to take this opportunity to wish you the very best of luck, and thank you for having me involved in the GA Hour over the last number of years. Obviously a very avid listener to the show about hurling and football, but I suppose just being on the show and getting to know you over the last number of years was certainly a great time for me, and it was an absolute pleasure to work alongside you. You always encouraged me to throw my opinion out on the table. We had a couple of debates. I normally agreed with you most of the time anyway. I think for a Kildare man and a Laois man, we sort of got on well. But yeah, it was a brilliant time. I always loved going up, and it was just like two old lads that reminiscing on football and talking about our day from time to time, and you know, it was always good, honest discussion, and I think that's what, you know, your listeners always enjoyed about the show, regardless of anything else. They got who you are and what you were about, and I think that was very, very important. You didn't try to be anything that you weren't. It was just raw honesty from yourself. So and I really enjoyed the time I spent with you discussing football. Obviously we locked horns a few times in on the field as well, and I suppose most notably the big one was the 0-3 Leinster final, where you came out on top, and I'm sure for the group of players that you had, you were very worthy winners on the day, and just look at the very best of luck. I'm sure we'll chat, lots of chats along the way, and wherever your next venture is, I've no doubt it'll be a success.
Hiya Willie, fair play on all the great work on the show over the years. We had great crack doing the show together, and I wish you all the best on your future endeavours. No doubt they'll be successful.
Hi Wooly, just want to wish you the very best luck for the future. It's been a pleasure working with you on the GA Hour for the last year. We've had some great chats just about hurling, football, everything in between. And look, it's been a pleasure over the last year. So just want to wish you the very best of luck. I'm sure there's great things ahead for you, and we'll chat soon.
Best of luck in your new venture. So there's the lads have asked me to do a video of our few years together. So what's called, I suppose one of the funniest things that came out of the whole show was the time that you asked me why don't the cornerbacks stand on the outside of their players.
No, Colin, you will not see that in the All-Ireland final, where the cornerbacks will be playing
on the sideline side of the back, and I let Paddy Stapleton explain the rest. Rule number 1, I'd say if that happened, Chairman O'Sullivan would out onto the pitch with a pair of shorts and such an 8 would give his cornerbacks go. Rule number 1, no, that will not happen.
Damien, you're making me sound like I'm a terrible gobshite altogether. I don't mean...
That's rule number 1, Colin. A back marks his man, and rule number 2, your cornerbacks stay on the goal side of your man to protect the goals. Now, Paddy Stapleton will elaborate more because he played cornerback.
All right, Wooly. All the best in your future endeavours. It's been brilliant. Well, as brilliant as it's been to work with you on the Joe.ie GA hour, it's been tough defending you every other day of the week in private. So absolutely had a brilliant time with you, super host, always really accommodating, and if just in case the public don't know, a top fella as well. Best of luck.
Before you came, we didn't even have a podcast, so I couldn't even imagine what the GA era would become. And all the memories along the way. And my favourite memory, you probably don't even remember because I'm pretty sure you were absolutely pissed, is when we were walking back to our hotel room in a Westport hotel, and there was just this lovely group of older people sitting there minding their own business in the lobby, and you treated them unprompted to a rendition of Nancy Spain, and it was beautiful. I'll never forget it. Thanks, honestly, and well done.